I Shot an Arrow into the Air has an interesting story behind the creation of it. Apparently, Rod Serling was at a party when he was approached by a woman named Madeline Champion. She explained the very basic idea and ending twist to Serling, who was so taken with the concept that he paid her $500 on the spot and gave her a credit in the episode. That kind of thing never happened again. This title was used for one of the original pilot scripts Serling made for the series. He instead used the title here, and that original pilot story was eventually made into the episode The Gift from Season 3. The production crew returned to Death Valley to shoot this episode. It was still incredibly hot, but after the production of The Lonely, they learned their lesson. Their food was light, and they took a 2-hour lunch break back at their hotel instead of the 45-minute on-set lunch that was the norm. From what it sounds like, nobody passed out from heat exhaustion this time. The story follows the first manned spaceflight from Earth. After the rocket known as Arrow 1 takes off, interference blocks out communications, and the control base is unable to find the aircraft. We see that they've crashed on an asteroid, and all but 4 of the astronauts died in the wreck, with 1 mortally wounded and on his last legs. The unharmed survivors are Colonel Bob Donlin and his crewmen Corey and Pearson. Corey immediately starts resenting his fellow astronauts when they give water to their dying colleague. With limited resources, the trio must survive for as long as possible without turning on each other.
I shot an arrow into the air. It landed I know not where.
The episode opens on a lot of stock footage, which blends in decently well. After one short scene in the control room, it's to the desert for the remainder of the runtime. The director of Cool Hand Luke, Stuart Rosenberg, helmed this project. It attempts to show us what can happen when staying alive takes precedence over friendship and compassion for your fellow man. Does it execute that successfully? Not really. I think this either needed to be longer or the pacing of it adjusted to drive that point home. Things just move too fast. There's not enough time spent with the characters to quite feel their struggle, and there's not much of a question where these characters are going. The ending twist is a good one, and we'll get to that in a minute, but the main problem here is the Corey character.
Colonel Donlin, it's hot, see? It's very hot.
Right away, he is extremely irritating. Most of it is the writing, but honestly, Dewey Martin's interpretation of the material didn't help much. He worked a ton, and I'm sure he was a decent actor, but here, he's all sorts of annoying.
I'm 1 man out of 3 who's going to need water. And 5 gallons isn't going to last very long.
I get what they're doing, but we needed to see some kind of build-up to Corey's current attitude. Donlin and Pearson mention how odd he's acting.
You were with Corey during the crash. What happened to him?
Nothing that I know of, sir. I can't understand it either.
But I feel like that's a cheap shortcut for his character development. And out of all 3 main players, he's the one that needed to be the most established as the story moves along. He's just too much of an obvious villain in this situation.
Colonel! This man's gonna die!
If he dies, he dies.
As a shock to no one, Corey kills Pearson, then Donlin, and takes their supplies to survive longer. Before he died, Pearson drew a shape in the sand that Donlin wasn't able to decipher, and Corey dismisses. With his comrades dead, Corey walks for miles and miles, until he sees...
Oh!
That's right, they were on Earth the whole time. The symbol Pearson was making was supposed to represent telephone poles. It's a good twist, unlike Martin's acting here.
We never left the Earth. We just crashed back into it.
Of course, there are some scientific logical leaps here, but it's the Twilight Zone. It's fantasy before pure science fiction most of the time. I can look past those little issues pretty easily, but when the character motivations seem weak, uninspired, and come off too forced in the writing and acting, that's not as easy to forgive in a show as high quality as this one. In any case, I Shot an Arrow into the Air is remembered quite fondly by most fans, so I'm in the minority and not really liking this episode too much. But if you saw it, what did you think? Definitely let me know. In the meantime, I'll be hitchhiking my way back into the Twilight Zone.